Noriko snickered, elbowing Jubilation. These guys have a password? In a sewer? What are they protecting, mold? Jubilation grinned. Bet it's something dumb, like Sewer Squad Forever. Anole shot them an irritated glance. Oh, damn it. He barked, exasperated. It's 616 no rats in Morlock. Happy now? The sound of several locks clicking echoed from behind the door before it creaked open, revealing a short, stocky mutant with yellowish, almost leathery skin. Mick scowled up at Anole before his gaze shifted to the group behind him. Who are these kids? He asked, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. Anole sighed, clearly at the end of his patience. The ones Callisto's expecting. Mick crossed his arms, his expression growing more dubious. I didn't hear about any of that. I can't let them in. They're kids. What sort of joke is this, Anole? Not a joke, Aiden said, stepping forward with a calm, assertive demeanor that made Mick's suspicion falter. We're here to talk to your leader about something important. Now, as I told your friend here, you can either guide me to her, or I'll go there myself, by force, if necessary. Mick raised an eyebrow, his skeptical gaze sweeping over Aiden. Look, kid, Anole might have been nice enough to lead you this far, but he could seriously harm you lot if it came down to it. You might want to think twice before throwing threats around here. Anole let out a frustrated groan, pinching the bridge of his nose. Mick. Why do you always have to be like this? Mick turned to him, confused. What? I'm just saying the truth, man. You're one of the top warriors here. These kids don't stand a chance against you. Anole looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. He jabbed a finger at Kitty, his voice dripping with irritation. Her. Just her, Mick. She beat me. Mick's eyes widened in disbelief. What? Her? Alone? His gaze darted back to Kitty, then to Anole. You're lizard boy. You're one of the strongest fighters here. Yeah, Anole grumbled, crossing his arms. Can we move on already? Just let them in, for crying out loud. Mick hesitated, his expression shifting from disbelief to something closer to wariness. He studied the group with newfound caution before stepping aside and gesturing toward the open door. All right, fine. My bad, eh? Go on in. Anole will take you to Callisto. Aiden gave Mick a cheeky wink as he passed. Good to meet you, Mick, he said mockingly, his tone light but pointed. Mick scowled but said nothing, stepping back into the shadows as the group followed Anole deeper into the Morlock's domain. You're really making friends down here, Jubilation whispered to Aiden with a grin. He smirked, his eyes focused ahead. Just wait. The fun's only starting. Anole led the group deeper into the tunnels, the sound of their footsteps echoing faintly in the confined space. The air grew cooler, damp with the scent of earth and faint traces of mildew. Aiden and the others remained quiet, following Anole's brisk pace as they moved further into the Morlock's domain. Just a heads up, Anole said over his shoulder, his tone flat but tinged with a sense of caution. Don't freak out when we get there. The people here. They've been through a lot. They might not give you the warmest welcome. Why would they freak out? Jubilation asked, stuffing her hands into her jacket pockets. It's not like we're a pack of surface bigots. Yeah, Noriko added, her tone sharp. We're mutants too, in case you forgot. Anole stopped walking and turned to face them. I know that. But the Morlocks aren't like you. You've got powers, sure, but you can blend in up there. His gaze swept over them, lingering on their mostly human appearances. Most people down here can't. They don't get the luxury of walking through a crowd without someone staring at them, calling them monsters, or worse. So, forgive me if I think you don't get it. The group fell silent for a moment, Anole's words sinking in. Sorry, Jubilation finally muttered, looking away. Yeah, Noriko added more softly. We didn't mean anything by it. Anole sighed, his irritation fading. It's fine. Just keep that in mind, all right? Without waiting for a response, he turned and continued walking. The tunnel widened ahead, the walls no longer rough and natural but reinforced with panels of metal and concrete. They emerged into an enormous underground cavern that took Aiden's breath away for a moment. The Morlock city sprawled out before them, illuminated by a patchwork of dim, flickering lights strung across the cavern ceiling. Whoa, Jubilation said, her voice breaking the stunned silence. This is way bigger than I thought. Yeah, Noriko agreed. It's like a whole other world down here. Aiden took it all in, his eyes scanning the scene. Makeshift homes constructed from scrap metal, tarps, and wooden planks formed a chaotic network of shelters. Small market stalls dotted the area, where mutants traded goods or bartered with what little they had. Everywhere, there were mutants whose appearances marked them as outcasts: reptilian skin, insect-like features, glowing eyes, and more. "This is the Morlock's Haven," Anol said, his voice softer now, almost reverent. "A place for mutants who don't fit in up there. People who were bullied, hunted, or abandoned just for looking different." As they walked, Anol pointed out different parts of the city. "We've got everything we need to survive: homes, a marketplace, and a barter system. Some people use money, but it's not as common. The elites, like me, act as a sort of military. We protect the people here and keep crime in check. In return, they follow the rules and stay out of trouble." Anol's expression darkened as he gestured toward a group of young mutants playing near one of the makeshift homes. "There are even kids here. Kids whose own parents kicked them out for being mutants. This is the only place they've got." Aiden's gaze lingered on the children, who laughed and chased each other despite their harsh surroundings. His expression softened, and he nodded. "I see. It must have been tough on all of you. You don't deserve this." Anol glanced at him, caught off guard by the sincerity in Aiden's voice. "Yeah. Well, we make do." The group continued through the city, weaving between tents and market stalls. A few Morlocks gave them curious or wary looks, but most ignored them. "Do you guys ever leave this place?" Noriko asked, looking around. "Not often," Anol replied. "It's dangerous up there for most of us. The surface doesn't want us, and we don't want them. Down here, we're safe. Or at least safer than we'd be up there." Eventually, they reached a larger structure at the center of the city. Unlike the haphazard tents and shelters surrounding it, this building was more solidly constructed, with reinforced walls and a guarded entrance. "This is where the boss lives," Anol said, nodding toward the building. Two guards stood watch outside the entrance, their expressions neutral but alert. When they saw Anol, they immediately stepped aside, opening the door without question. "Come on," Anol said, gesturing for the group to follow him. Inside, the atmosphere was different. The mutants here exuded a sense of power and authority, their postures confident and their eyes sharp. Aiden's group walked further into the building, their footsteps echoing softly against the floor. Near the back of the room, a young boy with green skin and large, dark eyes whispered something to a woman sitting in a chair. The woman was strikingly normal looking compared to the mutants around her, save for the black eye patch covering her left eye. She exuded authority, her posture relaxed but commanding. The boy, whom Anol identified as Leech, stepped aside as the woman stood, her gaze fixed on Aiden and his group. "So," she said, her voice sharp and edged with curiosity. "You're the brat who threatened our Leech, huh? And I hear you even managed to defeat Anol. I'm impressed." Aiden met her gaze without flinching, ignoring the wary and hostile stares of the others in the room. "Looks like word gets around quickly here. Not that I care." He tilted his head slightly. "I assume you're Callisto, the leader of this place?" She raised an eyebrow. "And what if I am?" "Good." Aiden crossed his arms, his voice steady and direct. "Then I'll get straight to the point. I've noticed the coating all around this bunker. It's designed to block Xavier and his Cerebro from detecting you. That's not something just any mutant would know how to do. So, I'm guessing you've worked with Magneto before." Callisto's gaze hardened slightly, her expression unreadable. "That's why I'm here," Aiden continued, his voice unyielding. "I'm looking for him." Callisto leaned back in her chair, her eye narrowing at Aiden as a hint of anger crept into her voice. "And what the hell makes you think I'll tell you? Even if I did know where he is?" Her gaze sharpened as she folded her arms, the mention of Magneto clearly hitting a nerve. Aiden didn't flinch under her scrutiny, his tone cold and precise as he replied. "Look, I've got business with Eric. He kidnapped one of my friends, and he killed two others. I know you were associated with him, Calliamber." Callisto stiffened at the mention of her old name, her lips pressing into a thin line, but Aiden didn't stop. "Ex-member of Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutants, codenamed White Knight. And I know you suffered that injury," he gestured to her eye patch, "because of him. Disagreements over his twisted opinions, wasn't it? So tell me, does that sound like someone you'd want to protect?" The room fell silent, the air heavy with tension. The other mutants in the room exchanged uncertain glances, unsure whether to intervene or wait for Callisto's response. Callisto stood abruptly, the scrape of her chair against the floor loud in the quiet room. She strode toward Aiden, her tall, imposing figure towering over the boy. Lowering herself to his level, she locked eyes with him, her expression a mix of anger and bitterness. "Someone I'd want to protect? She repeated, her voice low and venomous. No. I'd like to rip his heart out and eat it if I could. Here and now. Her hands clenched into fists as she spoke, the years of pent-up rage evident in her tone. But I know Eric. He isn't normal. He's strong, stronger than you can imagine, and his plans extend far beyond what you or I can comprehend. Kid, if I tell you where he is, I'll only be sending you to your deaths. Her words hung in the air like a warning, but Aiden's expression didn't waver. Callisto sighed heavily, turning away and walking back to her chair. She slumped into it, her anger replaced by a weary resignation. Just forget about your friend, she added dismissively, her voice now cold and detached. As for the ones who died, blame their weakness for it. Besides, wasn't their sacrifice necessary? For your survival? The moment the words left her mouth, the room shifted. In an instant, Aiden was no longer standing still, he moved like a blur, and before anyone could react, his hand was around Callisto's throat, lifting her from her chair. The other mutants in the room sprang to their feet, but flames erupted behind Aiden, encircling him and Callisto in a blazing barrier. The fire surged outward with a roar, forcing the others to retreat and cutting off any chance of interference. Callisto, a battle-hardened mutant with years of experience, struggled in his grip, her one good eye wide with shock. She hadn't seen the attack coming, and now, staring into Aiden's unrelenting gaze, she realized he was no ordinary mutant. His strength, the sheer heat radiating from the flames, and the precision of his attack all spoke volumes about his power. The silence in the room was broken only by the crackling of the flames as Aiden leaned in closer, his voice low but filled with a dangerous edge. First things first, he growled, his grip tightening just enough to make her wince. I don't forget about friends, and I leave no one behind. The fire flared brighter as his anger grew, casting his face in an ominous glow. Second, he continued, his voice dripping with venom, you insulted my dead friends. They weren't weak. They were young, kids who didn't get a fair chance. If they had, they'd have shone brighter than you ever could. Callisto's jaw tightened, but she said nothing, her breathing labored under his grip. And lastly, Aiden's voice remained cold as the flames surrounding them began to lower, though their intensity lingered in the air like a threat. He released Callisto from his grip, letting her drop back onto her feet. His gaze never left hers as he spoke with unwavering authority. I never said anything about my friend's sacrifice, he said, his tone razor sharp. Which means you already know what happened, Callisto. Now either you give up Eric, or I burn this entire building down. The flames around him flickered, the heat causing the room to grow uncomfortably warm. Although Callisto and the rest of the Morlocks were terrified at the power this seemingly young boy could display, Callisto refused to let her fear show. Straightening her posture, she glared at Aiden, her pride as a leader keeping her grounded. Damn it. Are you crazy? She snapped, her voice filled with frustration. You lost. You fought and lost. What's going to change now, kid? You'll only get yourself killed. Aiden didn't flinch, his eyes narrowing as he listened. Eric's a maniac, Callisto continued, pacing back and forth now. He doesn't know anything but how to achieve his own twisted goals. He may pretend to sympathize with mutants and claim to fight for our cause, but he doesn't care about us. Weak mutants like the ones here in the Morlocks? He's never given a damn about saving us. He only cares about his agenda. He'll kill all of you. So give it up. Aiden stood his ground, retracting most of the flames but leaving a faint heat around him, a reminder that he could ignite them again at any moment. Not this time, he said firmly. This time, I'll kill them all, every single one of the people responsible for what happened. And I know you know that something is going on, Callisto. His voice turned sharper, more calculated. It doesn't make sense for someone like you, who hates Eric, to keep his hideout a secret even when I'm threatening your own home. What's going on? Callisto clicked her tongue, clearly annoyed at his sharp conclusion. She didn't answer immediately, instead walking back to her chair. She grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the table beside her and poured herself a glass, her movement slow and deliberate. Taking a long sip, she finally turned her gaze back to Aiden. Can they wait outside? She asked, nodding toward Aiden's team. My team stays, Aiden replied flatly, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. Callisto sighed, the lines of her face softening slightly as if the weight of her role as a leader was finally catching up to her. I don't like Eric. I don't respect him. But what he's doing now. She trailed off, swirling the whiskey in her glass before continuing. What he's doing now just might be the right thing. And I'm not sure if I'm against him or not. Her words caught Aiden's attention, but before he could interrupt, she kept going. When Leech came to me, saying you were looking for me, I knew right away who you were. The new elemental mutant that almost killed Juggernaut at 14 years old. She let out a humorless laugh. Kid, you're famous. So, I'll admit. I thought about giving you up to Eric. Before you lose your shit, hear me out. Aiden clenched his fists, but he remained silent, letting her explain. I don't like Eric, Callisto repeated, her voice bitter. But recently, he found a mutant, a Chinese mutant who escaped to America. This guy had a unique power, future sight. He could jump his consciousness 10 seconds into the future and see what was coming. Normally, this process was painful as hell and dangerous for his brain, but Eric convinced him to keep doing it. Over and over. About 20 times. Callisto's tone darkened, her expression grim. On the 24th attempt, the guy had a brain stroke and died. But before that, Eric got what he needed. He pieced together the future this guy saw. Aiden's brow furrowed, his mind racing as he absorbed her words. With Mystique's powers to disguise herself and Rogue's ability to absorb mutant abilities, the humans developed something advanced, Callisto continued. Robots. Machines that could not only identify mutants but hunt and kill them. They'd absorb a mutant's powers using Rogue's DNA and then use Mystique's to transform themselves between powers. Eric called them the ultimate mutant killing machines, Sentinels. Hearing that name sent a jolt through Aiden's memories. Though he hadn't been a hardcore comic book reader in his past life, he knew enough about the X-Men lore to recognize the hell that Sentinels brought with them. They weren't just machines, they were nightmares. Still, though. Mystique's on Eric's team. I assume he's not killing her, so why the hell did he kidnap Rogue? Aiden's voice carried a hint of anger as he asked the question, his frustration evident. Callisto shook her head, her expression conflicted. I'm not sure about that bit of information. But from what I believe, Eric doesn't want to destroy the Sentinels. He wants to create them. And change their targets too. Humans. You know what you're saying, Callisto? Are you confident? Aiden's voice was cold and demanding, his piercing gaze fixed on the Morlock leader. Callisto nodded slowly, her face grim. As I stated, this is merely information I gathered and concluded. I have no proof. Aiden's fists clenched tightly, the tension radiating through his body. The others behind him, his team of mutants and allies, mirrored his unease. The idea of Sentinels targeting humans was catastrophic. Aiden's mind raced, the implications spiraling into a nightmarish reality. Sentinels hunting humans, Aiden muttered, the words heavy with dread. He looked at the floor as if searching for answers, then spoke louder, his thoughts spilling out. This would be the nail in the coffin. A world war, humans versus mutants. And not just that. The Avengers, the Fantastic Four, maybe even other groups. They'd all get involved. This could end up wiping out one of the races entirely, humans or mutants. His words hung in the air, the weight of the truth pressing down on everyone. Callisto shifted uncomfortably, but her silence confirmed she shared his fears. Aiden raised his head, his gaze now sharper, his voice filled with steel. Tell me where he is, Callisto. No more games. That man is going to cause an apocalypse. I don't know about you or the others, but I have a father and a sister, both still human. I'm not letting that crazy fuck start a war between the races. So give him up. Callisto hesitated, her usual composure cracking under Aiden's intensity. She opened her mouth to speak, but he cut her off before she could. I don't care what risks you think I'm taking, Aiden continued, his tone unwavering. I'll stop the war and the creation of those Sentinels. Period. And I'm not going to do it by wiping out another race, either. Now give him up. Callisto sighed deeply, leaning back in her chair. She reached for the glass of whiskey she'd poured earlier, taking a long, deliberate sip before meeting Aiden's fiery gaze. You're risking more than just your life, kid, she said, her voice low and heavy. You might be risking all of us. Our entire race. But I see it in your eyes, you're not going to stop. Fine. She placed the glass down with a soft clink and folded her hands together. I'll tell you what I know. But understand this, if he's not where I send you, I don't want to see you back here. Aiden didn't flinch. He didn't blink. Deal. Callisto nodded and began explaining, detailing the last location she believed Magneto might be hiding. This is the last place I know of, she said. It's remote, deep in the mountains. He's used it as a base before when he wanted to operate under the radar. If he's not there, you're on your own. Aiden and his team emerged from the Morlock's hideout, the cold night air a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere they left behind. As they moved through the darkened alleyways, Noriko broke the silence. Do you think she won't sell us out? She asked, her voice skeptical. I mean, what if she tells Magneto we're coming? Jubilation nodded in agreement, her arms crossed. Yeah, honestly, I thought you were going to at least threaten her. You know, just to make sure she wouldn't pull anything. Aiden kept walking, his pace steady, but he stopped suddenly, turning to face them. I considered it, he admitted, his voice calm but firm. It wouldn't be difficult. But the steps she went through to surround her bunker with that cerebro blocker? That's no easy feat. She knows not to do anything stupid, like risk her location being exposed. It's her only safe haven. The group fell silent for a moment, but Bobby broke it hesitantly. Forget about Callisto for now. Magneto. Are we really going after him? Noriko snorted, smirking. Of course we are. What's the problem, little ice princess? You getting cold feet already? What? I'm not changing my mind, Noriko, Bobby snapped, his voice rising. I'm just saying, it's not exactly an easy thing to do. We barely survived against 2 mutants last time. Let alone an army of them. Bobby's got a point, Aiden, Kitty chimed in, her expression serious. No matter how strong we've become, it's still not enough. Magneto's on a whole different level. Jubilation crossed her arms and frowned. What else are we supposed to do, though? It's not like we can tell Charles and the X-Men. Aiden raised an eyebrow at her. Why not? He asked simply, catching them all off guard. We'll need them anyway. Bobby and Kitty are right, we can't fight off an army alone. What? Noriko exclaimed, her frustration boiling over. But if we do that, they'll exclude us from the fight. From our revenge. Aiden's expression didn't falter. We'll leverage our involvement in the battle with the information we have, he said, his tone sharp and decisive. And even if they don't let us fight, once the battle starts, we join in anyway. In the heat of the moment, they won't be able to stop us. Noriko blinked, taken aback. Oh. You really thought this through? All the way, Aiden confirmed. He turned and resumed walking, motioning for them to follow. Now let's go. You guys need to head back to the mansion for now. I'll talk to Charles tomorrow. It's rare for you to call a meeting with me, Aiden. How have you been doing? Charles began, his voice carrying his usual composed tone. Aiden, standing rigid across the desk, didn't bite. His expression was sharp, his tone sharper. I'm going to cut to the chase. It's been a week. How is your search going? You have a missing student, remember? Charles sighed, leaning forward slightly, his demeanor that of a patient teacher addressing an impassioned student. Aiden, I've been searching everywhere. I promise, we are doing our best to locate Rogue. You just need to focus. Before he could finish, Aiden slammed his hands down on the desk, shattering it into pieces. The resounding crack echoed through the room as splinters scattered. The sudden sound brought Beast rushing into the room. Aiden. Calm down. Hank McCoy's deep voice boomed as he placed a firm hand on the young mutant's shoulder. Doing your best? Aiden bellowed, brushing off Beast's attempt to restrain him. Your best? Are you fucking kidding me? Moments later, Jean Grey and Cyclops burst into the room, drawn by the commotion. Jean quickly extended her powers, using telekinesis to hold Aiden in place. Aiden, calm down, Jean demanded, her voice edged with authority. I don't want to put you to sleep because I respect your mom, but don't force us to act. But Aiden didn't care. Flames erupted around him, clashing against Jean's psychic grip. His eyes burned with fury as he glared at Charles. Is this the X-Men? The so-called heroes of mutants? He spat. And you all couldn't locate one of your own? A kid that was kidnapped right under your noses. Jean faltered slightly at the intensity of his words and powers, her focus wavering. Aiden seized the moment, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. It took me 2 days, Charles. 2 fucking days. To find out where Magneto is. Jean's telekinetic hold broke as she stepped back, stunned. Beast released his grip as well, his face torn between frustration and concern. Even Cyclops seemed taken aback by the raw fury emanating from Aiden. Charles's eyes widened slightly, his calm facade cracking just enough to reveal the impact of Aiden's words. Now, what does that tell me, Charles? Aiden continued, his voice lowering but losing none of its edge. Are the X-Men so incompetent that I can do a better job in less time? Or have you all gotten so high up your asses that you think you can do everything remotely with Cerebro? Charles took a long breath, regaining some of his composure. Do you really know where he is, Aiden? Yes, Aiden replied coldly, crossing his arms. Courtesy of an old friend of his. And a bit of digging on my own. You know what else I found, Charles? He leaned forward, his tone now quieter but dripping with intensity. "I found the reason he kidnapped Rogue. And I found out what he's creating. Your ex-friend is one hell of a crazy bastard." The room went still. Aiden's flames receded, leaving only the faint scent of smoke in the air. Charles's voice softened as he asked, "What is he creating, Aiden?" "Not so fast," Aiden said, his tone firm. "I'll give you the details, but I want your assurance, me and my team are going to participate in the rescue mission." The room was thick with tension following Aiden's bold demand. Everyone present processed his words in their own way, their faces showing a mixture of shock, concern, and frustration. Cyclops was the first to speak, his tone sharp and accusatory. "Are you kidding me? Why are you even considering the kid's idea? Did you all forget what happened last time?" Jean spoke up next, her expression calm but firm. "Yes, Scott, we remember. But let's not ignore the facts. Aiden was able to defeat Frenzy and incapacitate Juggernaut. He's proven himself capable. I don't see it as a bad idea." "He's a kid, Jean." Beast's voice rose, his frustration spilling out as he turned to Aiden. "Aiden, I know you're angry about what happened during that mission, and you have every right to be. But it's dangerous. You are too young, too young. Charles, do not even consider this. Don't." Hank's outburst hung in the air for a moment before Charles raised a hand, signaling for calm. His face was drawn, his expression conflicted. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with guilt and regret. "Listen, Aiden. I have a hard time understanding you. Kids your age aren't supposed to be involved in things like this. That mission. It was a lapse in judgment on my part. I bear the weight of the lives lost. It haunts me every day, every second." "I was excited," Charles admitted, his voice trembling slightly. "Excited at the prospect of a new team of X-Men. A new generation of heroes. I had a vision of you and your team uniting the world, becoming the first to rid us of the stigma we mutants carry. But I can't risk it again. I won't." Aiden stood silently, absorbing the words of everyone in the room. His gaze swept across their faces, taking in their doubt, fear, and concern. Finally, he stepped forward, his voice steady and commanding. "Listen up," he began, his tone cutting through the room like a blade. "I'll say this once, and only once. I am special. This isn't arrogance, or confidence, or a superiority complex. It's just the truth. The first time I realized this was when I got my powers. It wasn't like the stories I've heard about other mutants. Usually, they discover their abilities slowly, over time. But me? I knew instantly what they were, what I was supposed to do, and what I was destined to become. The second time I realized this was when you tried to pry into my mind, Charles." Aiden's gaze locked with Xavier's, unflinching. It felt as if this world itself was protecting me from danger, guiding me. "So, when I say I want to participate, it isn't a request. It's a must. It's a condition you'll have to abide by." Aiden's eyes burned with determination as he continued, "I've gotten stronger, and yes. 3 weeks was enough. And I've already set my goals. So, either I join you in the rescue mission, or I do it alone. Simple as that." His words were a mix of truth and lies, a calculated move to manipulate the room. Aiden knew there was no mysterious world protecting him, and he wasn't even sure he was a true mutant. The system always labeled him as 50% mutant, but that made no sense. You were either a mutant or you weren't. Yet one truth remained unwavering in his mind: the goddess of death who reincarnated him warned that this world was in grave danger. If he failed to protect it, the consequences would be dire. Besides, Aiden thought, his resolve hardening, I've developed too many connections in this world to let it fall. My family, my friends, they're worth fighting for. The room fell silent, Aiden's declaration echoing in everyone's minds. Charles sat back in his chair, closing his eyes briefly before opening them again, his face weary but resolute. I don't want this, Aiden, he said finally, his voice soft yet firm. But I will allow it. On one condition, promise me one thing. Aiden tilted his head slightly, waiting for the request. Please, Charles continued, his voice almost pleading. Do not die. Aiden's expression softened for just a moment before he nodded. I promise. The briefing had concluded, and the atmosphere in the room was tense. The revelation of Magneto's location and the looming threat of the Sentinels weighed heavily on everyone's minds. As the X-Men exited, the gravity of their mission seemed to settle into each step. Aiden lingered, watching the others leave, but as he stepped toward the door, he noticed Cyclops standing there, arms crossed, clearly waiting for him. Aiden narrowed his eyes slightly, sensing the confrontation before it even began. "You've been acting like I'm some sort of sore to look at this entire time," he said, his voice even but laced with irritation. "So, what's up with it? What do you want? Scott?" Cyclops didn't hesitate, his words cutting through the air like a blade. "I think you're a hypocrite," he said flatly. "You isolate yourself, blame yourself for the deaths of your friends, fine. But now, here you are, leveraging the information you have to send more of your friends to their deaths. You could have excluded them, Aiden. You could have asked to join us on your own. But no. You wanted them, kids like you, to join us." Scott stepped closer, his eyes hard with accusation. "What was it last time? 2 traitors? Well, I'm thinking it might be 3 now. Because you were the reason your friends died before, and you'll be the reason if more of them die again." Aiden's expression darkened, his fists clenching at Scott's words. His eyes burned with a hateful glare for a fleeting moment before he exhaled sharply, forcing himself to calm down. "Honestly, Scott," Aiden began, his voice steady but tinged with weariness, "I don't hate you. All you're doing is looking out for the kids. If I were in your position, I'd probably think the same thing." Aiden ran a hand through his hair, his tone softening slightly. "Do you remember what I said in there? Had you not agreed, I would have gone alone." "Alone, Scott? I don't trust myself to protect them, not after last time." He paused, his gaze distant for a moment, as if reliving the pain of the past. Then he turned back to Scott, his voice resolute. "But I can't deny them the chance to evolve." Aiden stepped closer, meeting Scott's gaze with an intensity that couldn't be ignored. "I hate Charles. I think he's a manipulative bastard who uses his powers to exploit kids, raising them up as a team to do his bidding. A man who's had countless chances to end Eric but let him go time and time again." His voice grew harsher, the weight of his anger bleeding through. "And now here we are, with the threat of sentinels staring us down." "But..." Aiden's voice softened, his expression conflicted. "I hate that I agree with him. Charles is right. The world does need a team that can make mutants respectable, that can erase the stigma we carry." Aiden let out a bitter chuckle, shaking his head. "To make it simpler for you, I want them to grow, Scott. I want them to learn, using you and the others as a reference. And they can't do that through mere training. Real battles, real trials, that's what will shape them into the heroes mutants need." He stepped past Scott, pausing briefly to add, "So yes, it's hypocritical. But it's also necessary." Without waiting for a response, Aiden moved toward the hallway, his voice trailing behind him. "See you tomorrow, Cyclops." Scott stood there, staring after him, his jaw tight with frustration but his thoughts conflicted. The X-Men and Aiden's team stood assembled in the vast training room, where the Blackbird jet was prepped and waiting. The air buzzed with tension and determination, as this mission wasn't just about rescuing Rogue, it was about preventing Magneto and his Brotherhood from igniting global chaos with the Sentinels. The X-Men roster consisted of their elite members, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Beast, Wolverine, and Storm. Even Charles Xavier had decided to accompany them, though it was clear he intended to remain on the jet. Aiden's team, on the other hand, was comprised of Kitty, code name, Shadow Cat, Jubilation, code name, Jubilation, Noriko, code name Surge, and Bobby, code name Iceman, making for a total of 10 operatives. Storm addressed the group first, her calm but authoritative voice cutting through the tension. "I've run reconnaissance on the mountain where Magneto is hiding. It's an abandoned coal mine, heavily fortified. Based on the intelligence we've gathered, there are approximately 30 mutants in the area, putting us at a numerical disadvantage. However, we still have the element of surprise. Make sure to use it well." Beast stepped forward, holding up a schematic of the mines. "I've managed to recover old blueprints of the tunnels. The layout is complex, with numerous interconnected shafts and dead ends. Once inside, we'll need to split into teams and navigate separately. Whichever team locates the Brotherhood's main base will report it immediately through the mental link that Charles will establish." He adjusted his glasses as he continued. "The teams are as follows: Storm with Noriko, myself with Kitty, Cyclops with Jubilation, Wolverine with Bobby, and finally, Jean with Aiden." Charles Xavier, seated in his wheelchair near the edge of the group, spoke next. His tone was calm but carried a weight of urgency. "I want to make one thing clear, we are not here to engage in unnecessary combat. Our objectives are simple: rescue Rogue, destroy any blueprints or prototypes related to the Sentinels, and retreat. If the opportunity arises, we should neutralize Mystique to prevent further interference. But again, this mission is not about defeating the Brotherhood, it's about stopping Magneto's plans." As Charles scanned the group, His gaze lingered on Aiden for a moment, clearly emphasizing the last part. It was no secret that Aiden's fiery personality and personal grievances might push him toward confrontation. Aiden noticed the subtle look but met it with an unwavering expression. You needn't worry about me or my team. Like all of you, our priority is saving Rogue and stopping the Sentinels. That's all. Charles nodded, his confidence in Aiden reserved but evident. Good. Everyone, prepare yourselves and board the jet. It's time to save Rogue and put a stop to Magneto's dangerous ambitions. The group dispersed, each team heading toward the jet's ramp to board. Storm led Noriko with a quiet word of encouragement, while Beast and Kitty discussed potential routes they might encounter in the mines. Cyclops exchanged a brief but firm glance with Jubilation, reminding her of the seriousness of the mission. Wolverine, as usual, grumbled something under his breath about babysitting, earning a cheeky grin from Bobby. Jean approached Aiden and said, "Are you ready?" Aiden nodded and then replied, "Yeah, I'm good, though I gotta say, I thought your boyfriend would be the one that wanted to be with me, not you. You know, with his trust issues and all." Jean raised an eyebrow but kept her tone steady. "Scott just doesn't like the idea of putting children in danger, Aiden. He doesn't distrust you. You say that, but his actions yesterday say otherwise. Anyways, let's get going." As the Blackbird's engines roared to life and the teams filed aboard, the weight of the mission settled over them all as the jet ascended and set forth to their destination. The jet arrived at its destination but hovered at a safe distance from the cave system, hidden behind layers of dense forest. Its stealth mode ensured that neither its presence nor its faint hum could alert anyone below. The concern was clear: Magneto's ability to detect and manipulate metals posed a significant risk. Inside the cockpit, Jean studied the landscape carefully. "We're just far enough," she confirmed, glancing back at the rest of the team as they prepared to disembark. Beast leaned forward, his voice calm but commanding. "There are a few guards around the perimeter of the mines. We'll need to neutralize them swiftly and quietly. No alarms." The jet's hatch opened, and one by one, the team dropped silently into the forest below. Shadows cloaked them as they navigated through the thick trees toward the abandoned coal mine. The guards, though spread out, were no match for the team's coordination. Wolverine took two down with precision, his claws retracted to keep things quiet, while Storm and Noriko handled the others with minimal effort. Within minutes, the perimeter was cleared. "It's time we split up," Storm said, gesturing toward the dark, yawning mouth of the cave ahead. "We don't know how deep these tunnels go, but they could have some form of communication to the outside. Move quickly and quietly. If you encounter any resistance, keep it stealthy and avoid prolonged fights." Charles's voice echoed in their minds except for Aiden, steady and clear. "And above all, remember this: do not engage Magneto directly. If your location is compromised, or you encounter him or his key lieutenants, inform the rest of us immediately. We cannot afford any missteps. Good luck, all of you." With that, the teams gave one another final nods of acknowledgement. Each group entered the cave system, slipping into the shadows of the tunnels in their designated formations. The air inside was heavy, carrying the scent of damp earth and rusted metal. Every step felt like a gamble, the silence of the mines amplifying the weight of their mission. The rescue mission had begun. As everyone split up, Aiden found himself alone with Jean, walking through the dimly lit, stuffy cave. The air was thick with dust, and the silence was only broken by the distant dripping of water from the cave ceiling. Though it was nearly pitch black, Aiden could see clearly. Dragon slayers must have excellent night vision, he thought. "Shouldn't we move faster?" he asked, his voice low but firm. Jean shook her head. "No. We shouldn't rush things. It's better to take it slow. From what I hear, Wolverine and Iceman have already been attacked. They won, but still." "Did they find anything?" Aiden asked. "Not yet. No one's located the real entrance to Magneto's base." Aiden nodded, continuing forward. He had already figured something out when the teams were assigned. "Don't trust me enough anymore." That's why he was paired with Jean, one of the strongest X-Men, and more importantly, Cyclops' girlfriend. It was clear to Aiden that Cyclops had pushed for this. Before he could dwell on it further, his instincts flared. He moved in a blur, narrowly dodging something whipping toward him. The sound of the attack cracking against the cave floor echoed in the tunnel. Without hesitation, Aiden lunged at the source of the attack, his arm shifting into solid iron as he smashed into the cave wall. Rocks crumbled from the force, but there was no enemy in sight. A sudden gasp made him turn. Jean was on the ground, struggling against something wrapped tightly around her. A whip-like weapon constricted her, but Aiden could tell she was suffering from something else. Her face had turned deathly pale. She didn't dodge? What's happening to her? Without hesitation, Aiden transformed his arm into an iron sword and sliced through the whip, freeing Jean. He kept his senses sharp, but whoever had attacked was still hiding. If he's staying hidden, that means he's not confident in a direct fight, Aiden reasoned. I also can't use fire here, the cave's too enclosed. I need a different approach. An idea struck him. He jumped into the air and took a deep breath. Water dragons roar. A powerful surge of water blasted from his mouth, flooding the cave. The water spread through the uneven ground, drenching the rocks and leaving puddles in its wake. The attack wasn't meant to harm, just to expose the hidden enemy. Jean coughed and pushed herself up. Aiden. Uck. Be careful. He can drain life force. And I still can't sense him. Relax, I got this, Aiden smirked, kneeling to place his hand on the damp cave floor. Back up a bit, Jean. Jean stepped back as Aiden's fist crackled with electricity. Lightning Dragon's Fist. Electricity surged through the water, spreading rapidly across the wet cave floor. A scream echoed from the shadows. Ugh. A figure staggered into view, convulsing from the shock. Aiden's eyes locked onto the target. Now, Jean. Jean immediately used her telekinesis, slamming the enemy into the cave wall with force. Before he could recover, Aiden dashed forward at blinding speed, his iron-coated fist crashing into the enemy's face. The man's mask shattered from the impact as he collapsed, unconscious. Well, that was quick, Aiden said, shaking off the remnants of electricity from his hand. He turned to Jean with a smirk. You okay? Jean took a deep breath and nodded. Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks. She stepped closer to examine the unconscious man. Her expression darkened. This is Senyaka, a mutant who can absorb life force from his enemies. Aiden crossed his arms. So that's why his whip was able to immobilize you. Yes. But that still doesn't explain how he escaped my psychic scan. Unless. Jean's eyes widened as she pieced it together. There's a psychic with Magneto. She turned to Aiden, her voice grim. It must be Emma Frost. But she's supposed to be in prison. Aiden glanced down at Senyaka's unconscious form and shrugged. So, what do we do with this guy? Can't you read his mind or something? Find out where Magneto is hiding? Jean sighed and shook her head. Normally, yes. But if Emma Frost is really here, it won't be that easy. She could have planted a mental trap in his mind. The moment I try to read it, she might sense me and expose our location. Aiden frowned. I see. Mental shenanigans and all that, huh? He kicked a stray rock on the ground. So we're stuck just wandering around this damn cave? Got it. In another part of the cave, Storm and Noriko, Surge, moved cautiously through the darkness, their footsteps echoing softly against the stone walls. The air was damp, and the narrow tunnels made it difficult to maneuver. A blur of movement suddenly shot past them. Before they could react, a long, slimy tongue lashed out, wrapping tightly around Noriko's arms. Uck, what the hell? Noriko barely had time to react before she was yanked off her feet and slammed into the cave wall with a sickening thud. Storm took a step forward, eyes narrowing at their attacker, Toad. The mutant grinned, crouched on the cave wall like an insect, his beady yellow eyes gleaming in the dim light. Gotcha, little spark plug, Toad sneered, his voice dripping with amusement. Hope you like cave walls, 'cause you're about to get real familiar with them. Noriko gritted her teeth, electricity crackling around her body as she struggled against the tongue wrapped around her. Oh, you are so dead for that, you disgusting frog. She turned to Storm, expecting her mentor to intervene, but Storm remained still, arms crossed. Handle it, Noriko, Storm said simply. I won't interfere. Noriko's eyes widened. Are you serious? He just threw me. Storm's gaze was unwavering. This cave is too unstable. If I use my powers here, I could cause a collapse. Besides, consider this a test. Noriko clenched her fists. Great. A test. Just what I needed. Toad cackled. Oh, looks like your friend ain't helping ya, kid. That's a shame. He leapt from the wall, landing just a few feet away from her, his muscles tensed. Guess that means I get to have some real fun. Noriko growled, blue sparks surging around her hands. Oh, I hate you already. With a burst of speed, she dashed forward, aiming a punch at Toad's gut. But he was fast, he flipped over her attack with ease, landing on the ceiling like some kind of demented acrobat. Too slow, Sparky. He flicked his tongue again, aiming for her legs this time, but Noriko was ready. She jumped back, avoiding the slimy appendage. Enough with the damn tongue, she snapped, electricity surging through her body. She reached down and grabbed a loose metal rod that had fallen from an old mining structure. Grinning, she sent a powerful jolt of electricity through it, turning it into a makeshift stun baton. Code lunged again, tongue shooting forward. This time, Noriko smirked and let it wrap around her arm. Ha! Gotcha, Ag. BZZZT. The moment Toad's tongue made contact, a massive surge of electricity coursed through his body. His eyes went wide, his limbs spasming uncontrollably. Gah! Noriko yanked her arm free and didn't hesitate. She rushed in, slamming the electrified rod straight into his gut. Crackle! Code let out another pained shriek before his body seized up completely. His eyes rolled back, and with one final twitch, he collapsed onto the ground, unconscious. Noriko stood over him, panting. Then she looked down at his limp form, wrinkling her nose in disgust. Ugh, you are so gross, she muttered, shaking off the lingering slime from her arm. Storm finally stepped forward, her expression calm but approving. Well done. Noriko glared at her. Yeah, thanks for the help, mentor. Storm simply smirked. If you couldn't handle Toad on your own, you wouldn't be ready for anything worse. As they moved deeper into the cave, Jean suddenly stopped, placing 2 fingers on her temple. Hold on a second, she said, eyes unfocused. Inside her mind, she heard Beast's voice through their telepathic link. This is Beast to the team. Shadowcat and I have located the main entrance. We've taken down 2 guards, but from what I can see, Magneto has way more security than we estimated, easily over 30. Jean's expression tightened. Understood. Do you have a visual on Rogue? Negative. But we do see a group of mutants guarding a separate door. It looks important, might lead somewhere deeper. Cyclops joined the conversation. We'll rendezvous with you in a few minutes. Beast responded quickly. Negative. It's faster if you keep going your way. I can already see multiple entrances leading into this base, every cave seems to eventually connect here. Jean processed the information before replying. Okay, good. Dragon and I are near the end of the cave. We'll see you in a bit. She blinked back to reality, seeing Aiden staring at her, waiting. Unlike the others, he wasn't connected to the mental link. Well? He asked. Jean nodded. Beast and Shadowcat have found the enemy. According to Beast, if we keep moving, we'll reach them soon enough. Alright, cool. Let's get going then, Aiden said, rolling his shoulders. The 2 increased their pace, dashing forward through the narrowing tunnel. As they approached the exit, Aiden moved ahead, his body dissolving into his own shadow. Using Shadow Dragon Slayer magic, he slipped through the darkness, scouting ahead. A moment later, his voice echoed from the cave's exit. Come, there's no one here. Jean followed quickly, emerging into the open, only to realize just how fortunate their positioning was. The cave's exit was located at the top of the base, giving them a perfect vantage point. Below them, an enormous cavern stretched out, its ceiling held up by reinforced metal beams and natural rock formations. Bright industrial lights hung from the ceiling, illuminating the area. The Brotherhood's hidden base was more massive than they had expected. There were makeshift barracks, supply crates stacked against the walls, and walkways leading to different parts of the underground compound. In the center, a large open floor acted as a staging area, where several groups of mutants stood watch. Jean narrowed her eyes, scanning the figures below. That apostrophe S exclamation mark ... John, Pyro, she whispered, pointing toward a lean, blonde-haired boy in a red jacket. He absent-mindedly twirled a stream of fire between his fingers, grinning as he chatted with a few lower-level guards. Aiden's jaw clenched. His eyes locked onto John, a flicker of something dark passing through them. Jean continued scanning. Over there, that's Blob. A massive, overweight man stood with his arms crossed near the central supply area. His body seemed almost immovable, a mountain of sheer mass. He has super durability and strength. He's very hard to knock down. So be careful if you end up facing him.